I want to jump in to the digital dollar and maybe a little bit of stablecoin. I mean, you mentioned the stablecoin regulation. I guess that means something like USDC would come out with glowing colors. Tether is probably going to be under the gun and have to do a lot of explaining if this regulation comes out. I guess we can see what happens. But maybe we jump into the digital dollar because this is something that comes up time and time again. It's something that initially, if we're honest, Chris, probably scares people when they hear about the concept of the digital dollar. Now, I think when you start talking about it, you can explain why maybe that initial fear isn't correct. But when people usually hear about it, it sounds like this instrument of censorship, instrument of surveillance, instrument of control that's going to be used by governments, and you quickly go down this dystopian reality, and it sounds really bad and really scary. We obviously get examples of what's happening in China with this. When you were here on my show, you gave some of the most up-to-date, incredible information on this. So let's just start. What do people need to know about digital currencies going forward and how it might affect their lives, their future, or end the world as we know it, Chris?
Well, Brian, thank you. When you called and said, hey, why don't you come on the show? I saw this as an opportunity to try to demystify this subject. So thank you for this opportunity. And I tell you, you've got some great guests on your show, including Jim Rickards, who's he's voiced some real concerns about central bank digital currency. I'm a great fan of Jim. I've got his book, The Death of Money, on my shelf. I've cited him in some of my work at the CFTC, including my recent book, CryptoDad, The Fight for the Future of Money. I cite Jim. So I've got a great deal of respect. And I have a great deal of respect for the folks that see the potential of central bank digital currency being used to invade people's privacy. And they have good reason, because if we see what's being built in China with their digital yuan, what they call their ECNY, CNY is the international symbol for the Chinese currency. They call their digital currency the ECNY. It's already in over 250 million Chinese wallets. And it's naive to believe that it won't be used as a surveillance tool. If you criticize the regime, your ECNY will be turned off from getting a train out of your village or to pay the rent on the apartment you want. And I've got a paper coming out in a few weeks by the American Enterprise Institute that go through this work. I had the opportunity to serve on a Hoover Institute study that studied the ECNY and issued a report to the Biden administration about the concerns of the ECNY as a surveillance and censorship tool. So your guests like Jim Rickards and others are not wrong to be highly concerned about the development of CBDC, central bank digital currency, by democratic countries that might emulate some of that surveillance and censorship features. But whenever you go from an analog to a digital construct, your choices become infinite, your design choices. So just as it can be designed to be a privacy eroding and censorship imposing instrument, so it can also be designed to be a privacy protecting and a censorship resistant instrument. And so the question is, do we allow ourselves to fall into two camps? One camp that says, super CBDC or bust, and another camp that says, no way, no how, let's stop this in its tracks? Or do we take what I think is a more mature view that looks at history and says, throughout history, governments and money have always been intertwined. Now, money must enjoy the support of the private sector to carry any value, but governments have always been involved to provide some degree of trust in it. Can we trust government? And so my view is I'm as concerned about privacy as anyone. And if you look at the writings of the Digital Dollar Project, we have made privacy central to our discussions from day one. But my view is if we simply put our hands up and say, no way, no how, then we don't have a seat at the table. And if government launches CBDC somehow, despite that opposition, and privacy is not central, then those people that opposed it, what have they achieved by opposing it? Because it may happen anyway. And therefore, rather than simply say no way, no how, get in the game. And our Digital Dollar Project is about bringing the private sector and the public sector together to talk about what are society, in a democratic society, what are society's expectations for their money? Let's make it clear to policymakers that privacy must be central. If we get privacy wrong in a digital dollar, it will be a disaster. But let's look at it the other way. If we get privacy right in a digital dollar, how powerful would that be? And for those who say, no, just leave it to the private sector to design money. Let's let the private sector. Well, how has that worked out in the area of speech? We've left to the private sector to operate the public square in the form of Facebook, in the form of Twitter. And now through the Twitter files, we're seeing how government leaned on the private sector to say what could be discussed and what could not be discussed, and who could be featured and who could not. And Brian, you yourself have been a victim of government leaning on the private sector to ban certain speech. So those who say leave it to the private sector to do money might be doing some damage. Only government in the United States is subject to our First Amendment freedom of speech, our First Amendment freedom of assembly, freedom of religion. Only government is subject to our Fourth Amendment protections of privacy. So if we design a U.S. digital dollar right, and by the way, we do not advocate deployment of a digital dollar, but we do advocate the United States be a leader at the table, bringing democratic principles of freedom of speech, freedom of assembly to the discussion, privacy protection to the design of a digital dollar. And so I am very proud of our work at the digital dollar. I'm as a purist when it comes to privacy as anybody, but I'm very proud of our work because we are a private sector initiative that is speaking to policymakers saying, if you do this, you must put privacy front and center. The alternative is to say, do not do this. Do not create a CBDC. But what if it happens anyway? Then you've missed the opportunity to make privacy at the center of the conversation. Our work is to make sure that privacy, and it's more than privacy. We've issued a set of privacy principles we published in 2021. It's privacy. It's operational transparency so that citizens can actually establish for themselves that their privacy is being protected. Open architecture, so one doesn't need to rely on government saying, trust us, your privacy protected. We propose operational clarity. We also propose greater accessibility. So we've spent a lot of time thinking about this. And to those who are critical of engagement with the public sector on this, I invite them to read our privacy principles. Just this morning, we republished our 2020 white paper, January 2023, where we go through these privacy principles. You can find it on our website at www.digitaldollarproject.org. And I invite critics of CBDC to read our materials. And if you're a critic of CBDC because you're worried about privacy erosion, I say to you two things. One, do not assume that the private sector will respect your privacy. And two, do not assume we cannot get privacy right in a digital dollar or a digital pound or a digital euro if free people make their demands, make their conditions, make their rights known to policymakers as to what their expectations are in digital money of the future, sovereign digital money, as well as privacy. I'll just share one more thing. I was in Congress on Capitol Hill last week meeting with policymakers that are working on stablecoin legislation. And I said to them, what privacy protections are you building into your stablecoin legislation? And they said, we haven't thought about that. Oh, okay, great. So you're going to allow stablecoin operators to take everybody's data, sell it, censor it, allow administrations, the current one or the next one, to lean on them so that they can't be used to buy ammunition, can't be used to fund Right to Life, can't be used to fund private Planned Parenthood, depending on what side of the abortion debate a given administrations are. So you're willing to allow private operators to censor and to surveil people's use of money? Somehow that's okay. So I say to your listeners, if you think CBDC is bad, what are you doing about private operators to make sure they're not censoring and they're not surveilling digital money? We at the Digital Dollar Project believe that anti-censorship, anti-surveillance must be built into digital money, whether it's sovereign or non-sovereign, and we're advocating for that at every chance we get.
So Jim Rickards has just recorded a video that's not available to anyone in the public, and he's going to be talking about how this upcoming recession is going to be fast, it's going to be bloody, it's going to be nasty. But at the same time, he's going to show you how you can position yourself to profit from all of this chaos. Now, we've made this video only available to our viewers. Go to londonreal.tv/Jim. Watch that immediately. I can't say enough good things about Jim Rickards. He understands the global economic system better than any guest I've ever had on London Real. His predictions are almost uncannily true, and you can learn how to profit from his vision, from his expertise, and his understanding of economics. So go to londonreal.tv/Jim or click the link below. It's an excellent, excellent look on what's going to happen in the future and how you can position yourself to profit from that. Jim is one of the best in the business, one of my favorite guests on London Real, and he's very, very good at predicting the future and showing us all to profit from it. So click the link, and I hope you enjoy. Hey, it's Brian Rose, founder of the DeFi Academy. I've told you my 4-week crypto bootcamp is amazing, but don't take my word for it. This is what my students are saying.
The DeFi Academy was an amazing experience for me. It took me totally out of my comfort zone.
In this course, I was challenged, I was held accountable, and pushed to do things that honestly weren't always easy.
It's been phenomenal, and I can't believe we're already up on our 4 weeks. It has flown by.
Going through this DeFi accelerator by far was one of the best courses I've taken.
You do this course, you really get into the nitty-gritty of the activities that will make you comfortable with decentralized finance.
Thank you so much to Brian and everyone at London Real and the DeFi Academy for even putting together an amazing course like this.
Anybody else that wants to do it, please sign up. It is well worth the money.